if you were to consider your family, you would probably, on any given day, and with all else being equal, if a family member asked you to help you move furniture, this is an example that Joel Davis brought up. Pierce, I don't know, do you know Joel Davis? Yeah, he brought
Yeah.
up this. I mean, again, I think he's way too crazy in certain areas. I'm not extreme like him, but I thought it was a smart way of thinking about the topic. He said, if someone in your family asked you to help you move furniture, that becomes a very important obligation, even though the task itself is actually a little bit mundane and it's not that interesting in the grand scheme of affairs. But if a random stranger who you've never met asks you to engage in some chore, you're probably not going to be rude to them. I mean, you might, unless you're just a piece of shit, you might treat them with some decency. Most people would, but it's not going to be as important for you, and you're not really going to bump it up to your list of obligations and to your list of highest priorities. And so I think what Pearson is saying is if we talk about our families in such a manner, why don't we just scale that up to ethnicity if ethnicity is basically just extended family in some sense on a much larger
Yeah.
scale? Is
Yeah.
that
Well,
basically what
that
you're trying to, is that what you
yes,
were trying to
yes.
say?
But there
So
there
what
are
he's
two
saying is, so yeah,
points.
the last
Hold
part
on.
is, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
There are two minor points that actually made me think about. First, I think you were talking about closeness, and that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
made me think of something. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson has this rant. I know he's like a pseudo intellectual or whatever, like a fucking Reddit, but he has this
I
rant
fucking
where
love
he
science.
says, yeah, he has this rant where he says basically the bow and arrow was the end of bravery because you could kill somebody without looking them in the eye, and that ICBMs are like an extension of that, and that war is just, how far can you get away from other people with and kill them, right? And that made me think of, kind of, about the when the tree falls in the forest doesn't make
Yeah,
a
yeah, the
sound, like the
metaphysics.
whole
Yeah.
idealist argument. um and if an ICBM goes off and it bombs another country, right, most people, because those people are so physically far away from them, will not really comprehend the gravity of that decision. Like when we bomb Iran, when we bomb Palestine, when we, like,
Yeah.
they think it's so funny when, like, they do a pager attack and like blow up a million Lebanese people in like the most unethical way possible, the most cowardly way possible, and they think it's funny. If you're able to see that, like the footage that I think Julian Assange put out, where it showed like them bombing civilians, then it kind of gives the average person a better perspective on it. But it also kind of destroys the idealist concept because of those cameras. It destroys the concept of, if a tree falls in the forest, did it make a sound? Now that everywhere, we understand what's going on everywhere in the world, then we have to understand, well, yeah, it will make a sound. It will make a sound because ultimately, um, what I'm getting at is, if you don't see it, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And that was something that we kind of always knew, but humans didn't have to come face to face with it until we had video technology and stuff like that, and fast sharing of it, like on social media. Anyway, what you said about Joel Davis, yeah, I actually don't agree with everything that he says, but looking through history, the unfortunate thing is that moderates do not win. Okay, if there's anything you can learn from the Russian Revolution, it wasn't the Mensheviks that were pushing, you know, social reform, economic reform that won. It's always the more radical party that actually changes things, sometimes for the worst, but sometimes you need like those insane fucking people to push the boundaries so much you know in order for the moderate position to come about in practice, right? So, like a conservative, if they're saying, you know uh, all like this culturally right-wing stuff, and then they're arguing with like somebody on the left who's saying the opposite, who is going to dictate um, that conservative worldview coming into practice, it's not going to be the conservative. It's going to be like the reactionary, um, kind of vile element that's actually going to be able to bring that into fruition. So I kind of disagree with you there, but sorry, I kind of went off on a series
No,
of
it's fine.
things.
I get what you're trying to make. Wait, so you said the argument was you're saying history shows us that the moderates tend to lose? That's
Well, the moderates tend to um, be, you know, it's like kind of a dialectical materialist way of viewing it. It's like if you're these two forces are fighting together, right? The synthesis is going to be somewhere here. If my goal is to be here, then I'm not going to be able to achieve it by staying here, because eventually the opposition is going to also bring it closer together. If I'm trying to get here and my opposition is here, I want to be all the way out here so that it comes together here, right? You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I
That's
do,
kind
yeah.
of a weird way of
Yeah.
explaining it, but that's just kind of the way it is. It wasn't like it wasn't the people asking for less tax on tea that won the American Revolution. It wasn't like the reformists that won the French Revolution. It was the people who won the French Revolution were the people who saying, oh, the people who are saying just make it reform, we need to behead them. And that's kind of an extreme example, but it's just what caused, the tyrannical monarchy to end. Talking about reform would not cause any reform. It would just legitimate the position of the monarchy, because it would say that monarchy can exist in an ethical way. No, it can't exist in an ethical way. So they needed the kind of insane position to win in order to get rid of the monarchy.
No, yeah, I agree with you
But
on that. I think you're
I
referring
mean,
to the idea of,
one
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, if
Yeah.
I was just to, I guess you need both, right? Because if it was only people saying death to the king and chopping people's heads off and tarring and feathering people, if it was only them, then nothing would have happened either, because that would have been like chalked off as
Yeah,
like a
because
group
nobody
of
would support
terrorists or a
them.
group of extremists. Yeah, so you need the moderates just as you need the extremists. Like the
Mm-hmm.
moderates provide a foundation, right? Like usually a regulated and ethical one, and the extremists take steps that the moderates are unwilling to, that kind of show the
Yeah,
resolve of the
even
cause.
even what Jordan was talking about with Joel Davis, you saw the NSN lately, they had a march and it was probably 50,000 like conservatives, but it was being led by
Hmm.
the National Socialist Network. Because of that reason, they kind of need to have a symbiotic relationship in order to
Yeah.
function. Like the communists and the progressives, they need each other more than anything, because who
Hmm.
is going to give the communists the time of day? Who is going to give the communists
Good
like
old leftist
all that?
infighting.
Leftist
Yeah, well,
infighting, bro.
leftist
Yeah,
infighting is retarded, but
never gets old.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's generally detrimental, but somewhat warranted in some instances. I
You're a
have pretty
traitor to
complex
the
views on that.
revolution.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. My views on that have shifted over time, bro, because I've been influenced by different people. But I think so, Pearson, you're basically referring to the idea, if I'm not mistaken, of pushing the Overton window. Is that what
yeah,
you're talking about?
sort
There's
of.
this window within which most discourse falls, and you
Hmm.
think that the beneficial aspect of people who are somewhat more radical on either end of the political spectrum is that they enable us and they compel us to consider different ideas that wouldn't
Hmm.
have been considered within the scope of possibility in the past. That's
Hmm.
basically the argument.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think then probably what Rolf is trying to ask you is, what ideas do you think, first of all, what do you think of the term far right? I mean, it's been thrown around so frequently, it's just by the
Okay.
media and all of this. Do you think that it's a
Here's
legitimate faction that has, and it's not the same thing as the alt-right, because alt-right that's a fucking terrible label in so many ways, and it comes with so much baggage. But do you think that that's actually a movement, or
well, it's hard to describe, because when you're talking about where left and right come from, it comes from the French
Yeah,
Revolution.
French Revolution, yeah,
The
the
left
assembly.
was the Revolutionary Party, and the historical left has always been the revolutionaries and such. If I was far right, then that would mean that I'm in favor of uh, like what Trump is doing, or like monarch. If Trump becoming the monarch of America, No, that's not what I'm advocating for. I would actually describe my position as far left because even though I
My
have,
position is farting.
huh?
Nothing. Go on.
I didn't fucking hear you. What did you say?
Nothing. I said I described my position as farting.
Uh,
Oh,
great.
Yeah.
Well done.
So yeah, I would describe my position as far left, but I think the only way to achieve those goals is through kind of culturally traditional things that have always been culturally traditional because it's stable. History is kind of like physics in a way. So physics, it's not survival of the fittest necessarily, it's always survival of the stable. You can say like Germany in the 40s was the strongest. It didn't survive because it was unstable because they were waging a multi-front war. Or you look at Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was it like it Tito basically turned it into somewhat of an economic powerhouse, but it was unstable because of the amount of infighting that was going on in Yugoslavia. So it just completely collapsed and that civilization died. So what was I getting at before? What was the
question is, what do you think of the term far right? Is
Far
that
right,
a
yeah.
yes?
movement or?
So it's ultimately what will survive is what is stable. And the reason I was bringing that up is because in order to come to far left political and economic positions, like a great example of this is uh, the Spanish Civil War. So
Yeah,
on one
yeah,
side,
very true.
you had the far left, which was the Marxist faction. They were able to pretty much have a stable state because unlike the Francoist regime, which was actually something that you would describe as far right, they were kind of a mono-ethnic society and they were culturally conservative for the most part, except for some radical anarchists. Whereas the Francoists, although they won the war, the reason they won the war was because they essentially destabilized um, the Spanish Republic to such an extent by sanctions, which is what the United States does to every country that is not fitting into their version of global hegemony, which is actually why I support Russia in the Ukraine war. I don't have any so sorry, I'm kind of going off on tangents, but also
That's
the Francoist regime pushed like homosexuality in the Republic. They also pushed, they actually imported millions and millions and million, well, I don't know if it's millions and millions. They pushed a good amount of like Africans and such into the country to kind of, that's kind of what made it unstable. Also, it's frankly a more libertarian socialist economy, and army is not really all that stable. So what is going to be stable under a socialist government is going to be mono ethnic groups, traditional values as far as family, kind of an authoritarian structure, things like that, because that's what survived across history. It's not like this free market, well, not free market in terms of market, but like a free market culture where everybody's allowed to individually express themselves in whatever way they like. That's not
yeah.
what survives.
So which era of Spain are you describing around? The one that you think failed because of the factors that you just mentioned?
Republican Spain failed, but
Oh, Republican
because
Spain.
I
Yeah.
support the Republic as far as the as opposed to the Francoist faction.
Okay. Yeah. I would have supported the Republic as well. Yeah, that's a topic that I definitely obsessed over back in the day when I was more intensely ideological. I would think about the Spanish Civil War and the side that would have fought on. I would have supported the Republic, definitely. I would
I
have
would
fought
have
on
probably
both sides.
supported the Republic too. What about you, Rob?
Yeah. That actually would have been very
I don't know if I don't know enough about it.
damn, bro.
Yeah,
Come on.
No.
actually,
We're a pro-Republican Spain, the fucking podcast.
All right.
you know
Yeah,
what's
come
crazy?
on.
I'm gonna look
What?
into it. I might come back with some different opinions.
Okay.
You'd
Okay.
probably
But
support the Republic, but
You
yeah.
probably would, yeah.
You want to know some crazy facts about the Republic and
Sure,
Yes,
tell me some
please.
some
crazy
of their
facts about the Republic.
geopolitical ties?
Yes.
One of them was before the war. Guess who they supplied arms to?
Ooh,
No clue.
The National Socialist Wehrmacht.
Are
They
you
they
serious?
they
I've
supplied guns to them. It's
Oh
true.
yeah, I'd
And then
low-key
the other
definitely
thing,
support the Republic. Sorry, yeah.
and then and then after the war, when Franco took over and pretty much became like a monarchist, liberal, like a Pinochet type state, where it's like,
I mean, the Germans supplied weapons to Ethiopia when the Italians were fighting them. There were a lot of
yeah,
weird like
yeah.
interwar alliances.
But the main thing is the guy that everybody knows about from the Second World War. After what happened, he said, if I had known what would happen to the Phalangists, which were like the actual, kind of like my position or whatever you want to say in that war, people like Ledesma, who were actually like, um, you know,
at the frontier. Yeah.
actually realistically left wing, but fought for for the Francoist side because of its traditionalist qualities. Because essentially the Francoist regime killed all of them. He said if he knew what would have happened and what the regime would have turned out to be, that he would have supported the Republic, which is like the Marxist,
Yeah. Well, there were
leftist
anarchists
side.
as well, but
Yeah.
oh wow. So wait, they were supplying arms to the
The
Wehrmacht.
Wehrmacht. And
That's
Hitler said
crazy.
that if he knew what would have happened with Franco, that he would have supported the Republic instead.
But what happened afterwards that was so upsetting to him? What happened?
It pretty much became a liberal democratic state,
Oh,
like a capitalist state, like not too different from Pinochet or Trump or anything like that.
yeah. Speaking of Trump, do you think that okay, I mean there's so many different threads to explore here, but what do you think of the so-called right-wing support for Trump and just the general craze around him? Because it never really made that much sense to me. I mean, it made sense from the perspective of normie cons, as they call them. You know those types, and
Mhm.
it's some of the neocons as well, because on the policy level, he's just not really that different from them. I think, I mean, it makes sense that they would support him. But if you were on any right-wing space on the internet, maybe 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, going back to the Donald subreddit days, which was just fucking toxic. Even back then, but especially in retrospect, even to today, to subreddit like conservative and shit like that. I mean, there's just this Trump frenzy for the most part. And they think that he's just the savior of the world, basically, definitely the savior of America, at least. And I was wondering what you thought about that because I know you, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've described yourself as more of a right-wing guy in the past. And I know that you
Yeah.
definitely have, you're embedded within, maybe not within a tradition, but within, can I say this, embedded within a scene. It seems like there are people who are somewhat further right, who have a slightly different approach to what the right wing even means, who are more critical of him. So what have you thought
Yeah.
about him? Because he's a huge figure. I mean, you can't really escape him.
I
But
mean, okay, so I have very negative feelings towards neoconservatism, and I have very positive feelings towards paleoconservatism. And I think
okay,
that Donald Trump is a neoconservative who uses paleoconservative rhetoric to gain support. So that's my position on him.
that's
I think
basically
he's a total scumbag. I don't think he could ever be a nationalist. You can't be a billionaire and be a nationalist. That's just a contradiction. If you were really a nationalist, if you really cared about your country, would you really have like a 100-story golden tower? I don't think so. Would you really be giving like corporate bailouts to billionaires? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I do think that he's basically trash in pretty much every way. I think his policies are just nonsense for most
Yeah.
part. Even the policies to me that seem more, well, I'm not really see, nationalism is a difficult term. I mean, that's such a topic in and of itself. I'm not really an ethno-nationalist. I think the term ethnicities, it has a definition, but it would be better if it was more clearly defined. But I do agree that some level of national cohesion is present. And also think that the world, in terms of human behavior, human activity, human cultures, is obviously not completely homogeneous. And it's actually nice to preserve that state of heterogeneity. I do think that different people groups have different souls, different essences. I do think that that shapes the way in which they behave and actually conceive of the world. I think it's embedded in their tradition. So I'm not completely opposed to nationalism. I probably have more of a both a practical and more of a mythic or mythological approach to it, you could say. But I don't really think that Trump even qualifies, despite the fact that so many people in the media, so many pundits say he's an American nationalist. His agenda is one of an emphasis on domestic policy, protectionism, pulling us out of foreign wars, anti-interventionism. I mean, that was the main draw that people were talking about back in the day. Even if you're on places like
he doesn't
Muslim.
care about that. Like to be honest, when I
Yeah.
look at Trump, I look at someone who's pretty apolitical. Like he kind of just lets people attach ideas to him, but he does whatever like boosts his own ego. He doesn't actually care about the country or the policies he's enacting. He just cares about being at the top and being seen as kind of this like God figure. I just,
Yeah,
I
actually.
mean,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, I mean, to be honest with Trump, it's like the same thing happens over and over again in his like thousands of years. I think it's humanity's one of its biggest problems, and at least one of the largest problems in terms of like running governments, running democracies, is that you're always going to have these kind of like dictators and cults of personalities like take over, right? Like it's happened so many times. Every single civilization, every government, democracy, autocracy, whatever, right? It's you end up with one of these people, right? Um, but sometimes, right, like most of the time, actually, they actually come from a pretty kind of well-developed political background, right? They happen to combine this very like their skilled use of rhetoric with extreme ideas and some mental health issues, right? And that's how you get people like Hitler, right?